Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. My name is Jess. I upload videos a couple of times a week, mostly book related content but a little bit of lifestyle and travel as well. And today's video has been inspired by the fact that for the first time in a good number of years I am kicking the ass of my Goodreads reading goal. I am 5 or 6 books ahead, and yeah, I don't think that has happened in a very long time, and I'm just feeling really good about not only achieving my Goodreads goal but also surpassing it. So I thought that as we head into the latter half of 2020, such as the year has been, it might be fun to just do a really quick roundup of all the books that I have read so far, and then maybe, depending on how long the video ends up being, pull out a couple of my absolute favourite reads of the year so far. And I'm going to be honest and say most of them have cropped up in the last couple of months, so I have high hopes that perhaps for these remaining months I might get some absolute 5-star blow my mind reads as well. So without further ado, let's jump in and start talking about some books. The first book I read and completed in 2020 was Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater, and I started strong, giving this 4.5 stars. Next I read It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lisa Turkers, and because this is a non-fiction, this was unrated. Then I picked up The Garden of Lost and Found by Harriet Evans. I gave this 2.5 stars. Then I read Tower of Dawn by Sarah J Maas, and I gave this 4 stars. This is definitely my favourite book of the Throne of Glass series yet. Then I read War of the Roses Stormbird by Con Iggulden, and I gave this 3.5 stars. The Familiars by Stacey Hall, I gave 3 stars. I'm just going through this list and thinking, didn't read that many great books at the start of the year. Quite a few that I was highly anticipating that ended up being absolute disappointments, including The Binding by Bridget Collins, which I gave 2.5, at a push 3 stars. But then it was all redeemed by the master that is Brandon Sanderson. I picked up the Alloy of Law and Mistborn novel, and I gave this 5 stars. Then I read Thief River Falls by Brian Freeman, which incidentally I forgot to include in any of my monthly wrap-ups, so yeah, that one remains an anomaly. I gave that 3 stars. Then I picked up Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I actually filmed a reading vlog of me reading this if you want my full in-depth thoughts, but I gave this 5 stars. Then Blood Orange by Harriet Tice, which I gave 2.5 stars. And then The Mammoth, that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, which I gave 4.5 stars. Next we have The Shadows of Self, a Mistborn novel by Brandon Sanderson. I gave this 3.75 stars. The Whistler by John Grisham, I gave 3 stars. City of Heavenly Fire, a Shadowhunters novel by Cassandra Clare, I gave 3.5 stars. Then I read The Corset by Laura Purcell, which I gave 4.75 stars. I know I said I was going to talk about favourite books, but probably my least favourite book of the year, hands down, The Letter by Catherine Hughes. I gave this 1.5 to 2 stars. 2 stars on Goodreads because I felt really mean giving it just 1 star. A book by my absolute queen, Leigh Bardugo, King of Scars, I gave 5 stars. Then I picked up Strange the Dreamer, which was a reread for me in advance of picking up the sequel to this book, and I gave this 4 stars. And then I immediately picked up the sequel, which is Muse of Nightmares, and I gave this 4 stars. Then I read Wall of Silence by Tracy Buchanan, and I gave that 3 stars. Next I picked up Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, and I gave this 4.5 stars. Then I completed the 3 Dark Crowns series by Kendare Blake, so I picked up 2 Dark Reigns, and then immediately after that 5 Dark Fates, and I gave both of these 4.5 stars. A series that I would highly recommend. It was fantastic. I'm also beginning to think that I'm a little bit of a harsh judge when it comes to giving star ratings, because I'm picking up a lot of these books and thinking I really love that, and I remember really loving it, but there are not that many 5 stars in here. Lots of 4.5 stars, not that many 5 stars. May need to rethink my star rating system, but I tend to consider books that have like blown my socks off a 5-star read, and none of those really did it, even though some of them are fantastic. But yeah, I feel like I'm being really mean to some of these books because they're really good and I would definitely recommend them. But anyway, onto a book that I probably wouldn't recommend unless you are a fan of Claire North's writing style. I read 84K, I gave this 2 stars. I think I said this very clearly in my wrap up, but I really struggled with this book, and I think it's down to me not connecting with the way that Claire North writes. So if you like Claire North's writing style, you probably would love this. This is the second one of her books that I've picked up that I just have not connected with and haven't been able to gel with, and yeah, so it got a very low rating from me. Then I read This Terrible Beauty by Katrin Schumann, and I gave that 3 stars. A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles, I gave 5 stars. Would have given it 10 stars if 10 stars were a thing. Next I picked up Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. This one, despite it being fiction, I left unrated because I very much view this as a book of 2 halves. The first half I would have given no more than 2 stars to. The second half I would have given 4 stars easily to, and so I found it very, very difficult. I could have landed in the middle and given it 3 stars, but I feel like that would do the second half of this book an injustice. But I found the first half incredibly difficult to get through, so this one remains unrated. Then I read Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon, which I gave 3 stars to. The Heart of Betrayal by Mary E. Pearson, I gave 4 stars. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I gave 4.5 stars. Sin Eater by Megan Campisi, I gave 3 stars. And Sea Wife by Amity Gage, I also gave 3 stars. Then I read Dear Edward by Anne Napolitano, and I gave that 4 stars. Next I read White Chrysanthemum by Mary Lynn Bracht, and I have also decided to leave this unrated despite it being a fiction. It is about a period of World War II history that I am not hugely familiar, and I had a lot of issues with the writing style, but I found it very informative, so I have decided to treat it like a non-fiction, which I don't rate, so this one also remains unrated. Then I read The Truth About the Harry Quebert Affair by Joel Digger, and I gave this 4 stars. The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, I gave 4 stars. Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Ado-Lodge, I left unrated because it is non-fiction. Moonshine by Jasmine Gower, I gave 3 stars. 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. This was a book that I loved the writing style of, but not so much the way that it was written. So this landed between a 3.5 and a 4 stars for me, but I am going to pick up some more of Natalie Haynes' books. I think that she is a fantastic writer. It was just the layout of the content that missed the mark for me. But yeah, so solid, somewhere between probably like, oh, well, what's between 3.5 and 4, Jess? 3.75, so let's go with 3.75. A Rising Man by Abir Mukherjee. I think I rated this 4 stars on Goodreads, but then clarified that it was probably closer to a 3.5. So as with 1,000 Ships, I should probably have said 3.75 stars because that's where it firmly sits. Don't know why, it's only just occurred to me that I should be saying 3.75 stars. Then I picked up Beartown by Frederick Backman. What an emotional rollercoaster this book was. 4 stars. Oh, now we are into books that I read in September, and I haven't done my September wrap up yet, so you're kind of getting a sneak peek into my thoughts. The first book that I finished was Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. Absolutely going to be no surprise to anybody that I gave this 5 stars. I honestly think that Leigh Bardugo could write anything and I would give it 5 stars, so this is the first one. Then I read The Beekeeper of Aleppo by Christy Lefterry, and I gave this 3 stars. Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, I gave 4 stars. Malice by John Gwynne, I gave 4.5 stars. Absolutely fantastic book. Between the World and Me is a non-fiction, so I have left it unrated. And the final book that I have read and finished up to this point when I'm filming today is The Secrets of Strangers by Charity Norman, and I have given this 3.75 stars. So there you go, they are all the books that I have either read or listened to up to the day of filming. I literally finished The Secrets of Strangers yesterday, so that is how fresh off the press we are. So I'm probably going to do something that might seem a little bit strange now, but I want to pull out a couple of, well, I say a couple, it's going to be more than 2, probably more like 6 of my favourite books that I've read this year, and it might be interesting for you to note that it's probably not going to be the 5-star reads. I'm going to judge this on overall reading experience. So I mentioned earlier that my star rating system is a little bit harsh. Sometimes I will not give a book 5 stars because it's just missing that little something, but that doesn't mean that I haven't thoroughly enjoyed the reading experience and that I wouldn't immediately recommend it as a must read. And so rather than just picking the 6 books that I gave 5 stars to, which in itself I haven't given that many 5-star reviews out this year, so it would be fairly obvious already which books I was going to pick. What I'm going to do instead is pick out the 6 books that I had the best reading experience with and recommend those to you instead. So let me pull them out and then we'll have a brief chat. So the first book I'm going to talk about is an absolute mammoth of a read, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, and this book was an absolute ride. It's huge for a start. It has been described as the feminist Lord of the Rings, and I would 100% agree with that assessment. We follow a whole host of characters who all go on their own journey of self-discovery, but they're all working towards a common goal. There is a threat rising that will affect the entire world, and so although we have political divisions and religious differences and breakdowns in communication between the Western world and the Eastern world, everyone is working towards this common goal. We have our heroines, we have queens and dragons and female warriors and mysteries and magic and so much history all mixed in, and I just thought that it was fantastic. If you are big on character driven novels, then I think that you would absolutely love this. It took me an age. I was really unwell when I read this back in March, and it was just the thing that I needed to kind of escape and get away from everything that was going on in the world, right also at the outbreak of a pandemic. So if you want the ultimate in escapism, then I would definitely recommend this. I'm putting this on this list simply for the epic journey that it takes you on. I loved in particular that Samantha Shannon decided to do this as a standalone. It would have been very easy for her to split this up into a trilogy, but I love that it's just one mammoth book and epic journey that you get to go on with all your characters. There are some characters to love, there are some characters you become frustrated with, there are some characters that you despise, but just on the whole this is kind of an entire package rolled up in one for me, and I would highly recommend it. Then a book that may come as a surprise to lots of you who have been around this channel for a while, that I'm including it on this, but as I said, I'm picking these books based on my reading experience. So I'm picking The Truth About the Harry Quebert Affair by Joel Dicker. Now I didn't give this a huge rating. Number one, I have a bit of an issue, and it is an entirely personal issue for me, with books that have been translated. I have yet to find a book that I think has been translated perfectly, and I often find it a little bit of a stumbling block for me to get into the narrative because I feel like it reads a little bit stilted, and I definitely felt that was the case with this book, and until I got into the flow of it I found it really off-putting. However, I would say that this book deserves a place on this list simply because of the fact that you are left guessing the entire way through as to what actually is going on. I had so many different theories, I was back and forth, there were red herrings, there were things that were just thrown at you out of the blue. In terms of a book that is just a really fun reading experience, this ticks all the boxes. So this is a mystery thriller. We are predominantly following the story of a young man called Marcus, who is a best-selling author and has hit a little bit of a stumbling block in that he is suffering from writer's block, and he feels the pressure to write this follow-up to his bestseller that's going to be just as amazing. And Marcus's mentor is a guy called Harry Quebert, and Harry is accused of the murder of a 15-year-old, I want to say, yeah, 15-year-old girl called Nola, when her body is found on his property. And Nola went missing in 1975, and no one has known for 30 odd years what has happened to her, and Marcus sees his opportunity to solve his problem with his writer's block and write the truth about what actually happened between Harry and Nola. And so you're following flashbacks to what went on in the 1970s and the present day story as well. And as I said, this book is on here simply because it was a lot of fun in terms of the reading experience, just not knowing what on earth was going on, what was really happening. Yeah, if you like to be left guessing right up until the end, then this book will tick the boxes for you because it was great. It was just such a fantastic reading experience. As I said before, for me it was the writing style that let it down. I felt very much that you could tell that it was a translated book, and some of the phrases that the translator chose to use, I'd be like, oh, that isn't actually how we would say that in English. But yes, On the whole, as reading experiences go, this was brilliant and I would definitely recommend it. Next, I'm going to touch on a book that probably needs very little introduction, and that is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Honestly, I bang on about this book all the time. It's just such a fantastic book for me. As I said earlier on, I did a reading vlog. If you want to go and check that out, I will leave it linked down below. But this book just absolutely blew me away. It's what I would describe as a quiet book, in that not that much happens in terms of plot, and the language is almost overly descriptive and a little bit flowery, but there was just something about it that wormed sounds a bit negative, doesn't it? Kind of worked its way under my skin and just got its hooks in me. And I got to the last page, I closed the book, and I just had to sit and take a beat, because I thought, wow, it's just such a beautiful, gorgeous, fantastic example of storytelling, and I would highly recommend it. So in brief, this is a dual timeline story. We have the story predominantly of a marsh girl called Kaya. She lives in a town called Barkley Cove in the marshlands in North Carolina, and she is very much on the outside of her community. They kind of view her with some suspicion. And then the body of the town's sweetheart is found murdered, and Kaya seems to have some involvement. So we're following the story of Kaya from being a very young girl right up until the more present day timeline, and we're also following the present day timeline to uncover what exactly has happened. And honestly, this book is just amazing. I don't want to say too much more. I really think you need to go into it as blind as possible and just go on the journey that this book takes you on. I cannot recommend it enough. It's one of those books where I really wish that I could have the experience of reading it for the first time again, because it just is so good. Then another book which will come as absolutely no surprise, and that is A Gentleman in Moscow by Anne Martels. This is a 5-star read. Honestly, if I could give it more than 5 stars, I would. This is historical fiction. It starts its life in the 1920s, and we're following the story of Count Alexander Rostov, who is placed under house arrest in Moscow in a hotel called the Hotel Metropole. He is one of the old nobility, and as such he is viewed very much as an outcast in the new government. So he's placed under house arrest and is basically told that he will be imprisoned and possibly eliminated if he ever leaves the hotel. And so we very much get Alexander's story from within the confines of the hotel, and you would honestly think that a story like that would be incredibly boring, but it is not. It is stunning, it is beautiful. The narrative and the prose and just Alexander as a character, there is just so much to love about this book. The diversity and the quirkiness of some of the characters that Alexander meets within the walls of the hotel is brilliant. Just even the concept of his life being reduced to such a small space, and how Anne Martels manages to bring that to life is just fantastic. Again, a book that I very much wish I could read for the first time again and just get that rich reading experience that I got when I picked this up. It says on the front, a book to spark joy. 100% would agree with that. This is another example of gorgeous storytelling that I would highly recommend. We are nearly there. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And as with Leigh Bardugo, Taylor Jenkins Reid is an author whose writing style I just absolutely connect with, and it seems that no matter what she's writing about, I am going to enjoy it and love it. So this is the story of Evelyn Hugo. She is a famous Hollywood star, and she decides to tell her life story, which has been shrouded in mystery for many decades, to a fairly unknown journalist. And so we are following the story in the present day as the journalist is kind of wondering, why have I been chosen, what's going on here? And we go back to the start of Evelyn's career, the things that she had to do and go through, the sacrifices that she had to make. And again, this is just a really good reading experience. I loved the whole concept of the Hollywood glamour, but there are also, you know, this book also touches on family and love and sacrifices, whether success and fame are more important than love and family. And obviously you would say, no, that's not the case, but the way that Evelyn kind of views things in her world makes you sort of see it through a different perspective, and it's just really good. As I said, I loved the whole glamour of the book in general, but Evelyn is just a really likeable protagonist, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the twist at the end. I did see the twist coming, but it was just very well done. A good and diverse and interesting story, and one that I would highly recommend. And the final book I'm going to talk about is Beartown by Fredrik Backman, and I said this earlier when I held it up, but what an emotional roller coaster this book is. I have a personal love of books that take a contentious issue, an issue where you would say 100% this is what I think. If someone were to ask you, what's your opinion on this, or what should I do about this, and you 100% would say it's this, this and this. But books make you question whether you are right, or present you with a different side of the story. I love books like that. It's why I love Jodi Picoult, and this definitely does that. So we are following the story of a remote town. It is called Beartown. It's on the edge of a forest, and it's a town that is becoming more isolated and more run down. Businesses are closing, unemployment is high, people are moving away to bigger, more vibrant cities, and it's just a town that is on the downward. But there is one thing that all of the townspeople hold in common, and that is their hockey team, and the junior hockey team has the opportunity to become the best in the country, and that will see the town injected with money. There'll be a new hockey school, businesses and advertisers will want to invest, and so it's very much feels like the town's future is riding on the success of the junior hockey team. And then a member of the hockey team does something, and it sets off a ripple effect that affects the whole community and sees a huge division occur. And this book was just so good. Again, it's a translated book, which I think is very telling and very obvious, but the thing that I really appreciated about it actually, sometimes the writing was a little bit simplistic, but every now and then Fredrik Backman would just throw out this real gem of a thought at you, and you can see where I've tabbed a number of them, and I would just have to sit and think about it for a minute. It was almost like it hit me in the face, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, let me just sit and think on that for a minute. And yeah, just on the whole, this book made me feel a whole wealth of emotions. You know, I was laughing and crying, I was incensed and furious, I was heartbroken and devastated. It just gives you all the feels. If you want a reading experience where you honestly go from one extreme to the other in the blink of an eye, then I would definitely recommend Beartown. I thought it was great for the reading experience. Not without its problems, not without its plot holes, but that almost doesn't matter when you're having a fantastic reading experience. You're almost just willing to let that slide because you're just going on the journey that the author is taking you on, and this book definitely takes you on a journey, let me tell you. Thought it was great. And as I said, the standout thing for me was the little things that he would just kind of scatter into the narrative, and you could almost skim over them, but there would be some that would just hook me, and I think, gosh, yeah, okay, that's actually really powerful and really important. Let me just think about that for a second. Yeah, thought it was great. Would definitely recommend it. There you go. They are all the books that I have read in 2020 so far, and a few of my favourites that I would definitely recommend. Hopefully in the next 3 months I will also read some absolute corkers, but well, we shall see. I'm sure that at the end of 2020 I will do an overall overview, but as I said at the beginning, because I'm doing so well with my Goodreads goal, I just wanted to do a really quick overview and see where I felt I was in the year as a whole with my reading. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Do leave me a comment. Let me know what your favourite read of 2020 is, or if that's too difficult a question, let me know what your top 2 or 3 reads of 2020 are. I always love to chat more with you in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you all soon.